Well, good evening and welcome to this evening's webinar, Truth, Trust and Tech, Making Financial Decisions in the Age of AI. I'm Lorraine Windsor and I'll be hosting the webinar on behalf of Ginkgo Financial. We've got two experts with us today, Daren Wallbank from Ginkgo Financial and our guest speaker, Mike Chatterton from AI Accelerator. This webinar is being recorded and a link to the recording will be sent out to you after the webinar. If you have any questions, please add them to the Q&A section, and I'll put them to our experts at the end of their presentation. So I'm now going to hand over to Daren and Mike to introduce themselves and deliver this evening's presentation.
Hi, good evening, everybody. I'm Daren Wallbank at Ginkgo Financial. I'm going to sort of cover a little bit of how the AI has started to move into the financial services area, and Mike's going to tell us a little bit about AI. If I go on, so I think we're going to start with what AI actually is and what it isn't. So Mike, I'll hand over to you.
Excellent. Thanks, Daren. Okay, so thanks for having me today. My name is Mike Chatterton. So I run something called the AI Accelerator. So we're a consultancy training business and help with AI adoption. We're based in North Greenwich, so we're local to the area. And we help all sorts of different brands moving from small SMEs or independent organizations all the way up to big brands like LMS and Tokyo Marine and things like that. So we deal with lots of different scale of organizations. And the core thing that we work on is helping people to adopt AI. And the first step of that is really about understanding what it is and what's changed in the last few years. So I'm just going to quickly run you through kind of what's happened, just to give you a bit of insight and cut through some of the noise about all this sort of AI everywhere stuff that you hear about. To do that, what I'm going to do is first off, I'm just going to rewind a little bit just so you can understand sort of what's happened recently. Now, AI as a technology has been around basically since the 50s. It's been around for quite a long time and it's been developing over that time. And for the most part, it's been interested in things like spam filters, driving cars, spotting medical things on imagery and that kind of thing. But around about 2017, there were some developments around language and AI that could work in language. Up until that point, it had been a bit of a backwater thing, but computer scientists has always really wanted to talk to computers. So it'd always kind of been going along. However, 2017, some pretty impressive things happened. And a few of the big problems or challenges with creating AIs around human language was solved. And what that led to is this explosion in capability around using language, because AIs that can use language are kind of general purpose AIs that we can use for pretty much anything, because they just look at patterns in the way that we talk. So this is what's happened recently, and there's this big explosion. You'll have probably heard of something called ChatGPT, and that's kind of one of these big sort of AIs. They're called large language models, and they're AIs that just deal with human language. And they've led to a lot of developments, and they're basically at the core of all the noise that you're hearing at the moment is the development of these particular things. So let's just have a quick chat about, or let's take you through what AI is, or a definition we have. So this is something that we hear a lot is AI can refer to any situation where a machine carries out a task that would usually require human intelligence. And that's quite a sort of long statement, but this is the one that we go with. And this is its outsourced cognitive effort. So it's thinking that you can delegate to a machine. Now, it's not quite thinking in the same way that we humans do thinking, but it does some of the same outputs of that thinking. So, for instance, getting it to do some research for you, or getting it to look at some documents and summarize them and things like that. There's all sorts of amazing things that it can do, but essentially what it's doing is it's just doing that kind of thinking cognitive activity for you. Now, you still need to build a human into that, and we'll come on to that in a second. One of the things to remember about AI that a lot of people get mistaken on is they kind of think that AI is a big database that's got all the information that's there and it can just go and look things up. And it's the same as any other sort of algorithm that's working out exactly what happens. And this is kind of how software's been for quite a few years, or most of its life really, where software was if this, do that, if this, do that. It's very deterministic. However, with AI, it looks at probabilities. So it looks at what's the most likely thing to happen. And actually, it doesn't always pick the same answer because of that probability. And that's quite hard for us humans to understand sometimes. But by using this technique, it allows it to do some incredible things, which is why everyone gets very excited about it. To give you the really, really simple version of what's happening at the moment and what these AI models are, if you take this idea around, if you took all of human knowledge, everything on the internet, all the books that have been created, all the videos, all the transcripts, and you compressed all of that information into what's called a model, you'll end up with this kind of capability to predict what might happen after you put some words in. So it might say likely words that would follow if you, for instance, started the first sentence of a Harry Potter book. It would be able to predict what the second sentence would be because it's seen that in the training data. And that's essentially how AI works, the large language model pieces. Most of the effort with that is done in the training phase with lots of computers and big amounts of data, huge amounts of data. But once it's done, they've created these models, which are essentially static. And then you can use these models to ask them questions. And you may ask them for instance, a recipe, or you might ask them for financial advice. But the thing to remember is it's not actually giving you an exact answer the way actually looking something up in a book or getting the actual database or information. It's giving you patterns of what might be a good answer. And this is something that's really important to remember whenever you're using any of these AIs, the Copilots, Geminis, Claudes, or any of these things. This is the thing to keep in mind. It's giving you a probable answer, not the answer. Okay, so the bit that we're using at the moment, all of these systems that you hear, the majority of the apps and things you see are using these large language models behind them. And that's why everyone's very excited at the moment, basically because we're still discovering what they can do. So there's all sorts of things that we've found them to be able to do over the last few years, being able to summarize things, tell jokes, translate, understand language, tell stories. And the more we test with them, we find that actually they can do some really incredible things. But we're still not sure we've found all of those things that they can do. The thing to bear in mind with all of this is that we're still really early on in the discovery phase. And that means that we're all still experimenting. What's quite interesting about this technology is even the people who built it aren't quite sure of all the things it can do. It's not like they sat down and said, we want it to be able to do these things. It just could, due to the nature of scale, the amount of data and processing that was put in, which makes it really exciting, but also kind of scary in terms of we're used to software that we can just ask questions and really trust the results. Whereas with AI, that trust can be a bit of an issue because we're not sure if it's actually the right answer or it's just telling us what we want to hear or what might be a likely answer. And there is a sort of distinct difference between the two. So I'll summarize here and I'll just use this analogy that I use when I'm training people out in the professional world. And that's the way to think about AI, and it's a bit reductive, but it's a bit like a magic box. You can kind of move these models around, you can ask them questions, and they can give you incredible results, but you're not 100% sure why it's giving you that result. And if you're going to trust all of your finances with it, sometimes you want to be 100% sure why it's giving you that answer or why it's advising you to do something. So with that, I think I'll pass back over to Daren here, because I think the trust question around here, and I've teed you up here, Daren, is really the key thing around using AI. So I'll stop sharing now.
Thank you very much for that, Mike. That was your slides are a lot better than mine. I have to tell you that. So mine are very straightforward. But yeah, I mean, it's really we know what it can do, but what should we let it do, and definitely how much should we trust it with our finances. So the first thing we trusted in the tool is to try and understand who made it, what they're going to do with your data, and they're using it for training. The key things here is if you have a free AI model, what we're discovering is you can't be sure that data. In fact, the data is unlikely to be kept private. So anything you put into that model will be used by that model for training, which is hardly what you want to do with any private financial information. So we very much say if you are going to use any sort of AI for financial modeling or assistance, you should be on a paid for system where you're sure it isn't using your data for training. I mean, Mike, is that something you're finding there's a lot of where people are just putting data into OpenAI?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people just, they try something new and they're like, oh, this is cool. It's giving me good results and it's free. And the thing is, it's like any free service. Basically, the people who make these things have run out of data. So the way to get data is to give you free access and then take the data of you using it to feed into their next training process. So yeah, absolutely. So as you say, use if you're going to use this for anything sort of confidential, really you should be looking at a paid account and ideally one of the big providers.
Yeah, I think that definitely there's always a, vague privacy terms being too good to be true. Probably is. Let's go through. So trusting the output. This is really interesting. I mean, I'm sure we've all put stuff into AI and got all sorts of very different answers out. And the key thing is, as Mike said, the AI doesn't know the answer. It's just predicting what it thinks is going to be the answer. In a lot of cases, AI has tended to follow, giving you what you want to hear based on what you've asked it before. So it ends up going in completely the wrong direction and doesn't always give you the correct answer. We find another thing with AI and where we've used it is it's not always up to date. In fact, dates are very difficult for AI. We quite often find that it's got the wrong year, it's got the wrong day. And when we're talking about finances, particularly around changes in tax rates with Rachel Reeves changing so regularly the tax rates, very rarely, without a lot of additional instructions, does an AI know exactly where it is in the world time-wise and apply the correct tax rules. And it doesn't know who you are. It doesn't really know where you come from, what you're looking to achieve. So in a lot of cases, it will give you a very general reply, not something that's quite specific to you. Mike, anything you want to add on that?
No, not really. I mean, like you say, it's just making sure it's the level of trust in it. What's interesting is sometimes it can sound very compelling and it can
Yes.
make it sound like it does know. And
Yeah.
that's just the nature of what it does and how it's been designed is it will sound convincing and you as a human have to use your judgment to know
Yeah.
that it's not.
It is very 100% confident in its outcome. It is absolutely adamant until you tell it it's wrong, and then it'll probably apologize profusely. Oh yes, I missed that, but it just doesn't have any sort of real, doesn't have any money in the game as to why it's bothered whether it's right or wrong. It's just giving an answer, and it's only if you know it's wrong that you can push it forward and tell it so. So, the key thing is if you are using it for any sort of financial decision, even for the very basic questions on budgeting, you need to look at what happens if this goes wrong. Because I can assure you that the AI company will not be responsible for you losing money or for doing the wrong decision, which costs you thousands of pounds. So what we suggest to some clients, if they are going to use some element of AI, where should you start? What is safe? And using it for things like basic budgeting, simple numbers, adding up your expenses and your income, great. Putting in jargon. The financial services is full of jargon, whether it's from the FCA to ISAs to SIPs. There's jargon everywhere. So using it just to understand that can be really help and clarify things. We have said to clients and to particularly to new clients, use AI to create a list of questions to ask an advisor, a new advisor, existing advisor. It's really important that you can use it to your benefit. And this is one of the things we have found is quite helpful. Comparing product features. This is, again, it's very complex financial products. And a lot of people are selling the froth and the cream, but not the actual product beneath it. So it's really helpful to be able to put in the details of a product or a terms and condition booklet and say, can you give me this? Simply analyze it. What does this mean? And compare it with another provider. We have seen quite a lot of providers we've been in competition with, and they've said wise things to a client, and the client hasn't been aware of what's actually going on under the bonnet. But by putting in the full details into an AI, that becomes quite clear. Drafting goals, again, if you're looking for targets or where you want to achieve on a simple sort of, if I put X in and make X return, what's that going to look like? It's really good at creating those graphs, which we find. Anything, Mike, on that? Or
No, not really. I think I think you're absolutely right. It's just there's a lot of low-hanging fruit. There are things in terms of helping you to understand things better. It's a really good thing to use for that, rather than trying to get it make decisions for you. Help it to demystify things.
Okay, cool. So the medium risk is things that if you maybe know what you're doing or a little bit more clever, you can use. You're not making decisions, but if you start using it for things like tax calculations, it will fall over. It will get answers wrong because it won't know the correct rates. It has a habit of guessing and making assumptions. One of the things we do find with AI is if it doesn't know, it guesses, but it doesn't tell you it guessed. It just makes up the answer, and again is as confident as ever that it's the correct answer until you question it. So it's really difficult to really know whether it's correct or not unless you already knew the answer. When you compare investments, this can be difficult. Investments are very complex. They can have all sorts of different nuances within them that are not always picked up or not always given the correct weighting. So you'll find something that's quite a small issue is given a really heavy weighting, and it could put you off an investment or at least considering it because it's not really picked up something that's that important. It's overweighted something. Again, same with financial topics. It will give you an answer that it feels is a good answer based on what it thinks is important, not necessarily what you think is important. But finally, if you do use AI for anything, always double check it. We would suggest having two AIs doing the same thing. So ask ChatGPT, ask Copilot, ask Claude, and see what they all say, and use one to check the other. So if you say, "Oh, I got this on Claude," ask Copilot or put that into Copilot to see if you can get it to cross-check, because they're really good. That's one thing they are good at cross-checking each other. You can actually get them having arguments at sometimes. High risk stuff we would really not advise or suggest that someone uses AI alone for is proper planning, financial advice, making pension decisions, and things that are irreversible, like accessing money on a pension. People say, "Oh, should I take my tax-free cash out?" Is a final decision and can't be changed. And if you do make a decision based on what an AI tells you and it's wrong, as we said earlier, there's literally no one you can complain to. There's no comeback. It's all going to be on your head. So yeah, proper financial planning really does need a human being who's regulated, passed exams, and is also going to take responsibility for that decision. So I would strongly advise not using it for any irreversible decision. All right, Mike, what's coming? What's coming? I mean, what's coming for us? I mean, yeah, I mean, AI is getting better. The FCA is already looking to regulate the use of AI within financial services. That is something that's coming down the road. I think something to look at is to be sure that where you are using AI or someone's using it on your behalf, that they are still got some accountability on how that's being used. For us, our advisor role is evolving. We're very much using some elements of AI within Ginkgo, but it's always to help us have a much more personal approach, spend more time with the client and truly understand that client's journey and what's desires. It's a supporting role, and it's helping us do a lot more manual grinding, but absolutely always with a human being making those critical decisions on the top. But yeah, so Mike, what's it going to look like in a couple of years?
Well, it's an interesting one. So, I mean, key things that people need to be aware of is our interaction with computers is very much moving towards voice now. And you might have noticed this. I know, Daren, sometimes you ask clients if it's okay to record calls because it actually gives you a much better understanding and memory of things that have happened. And I'd advise people to actually use this technique themselves. You have the ability, most smartphones now have got the ability to transcribe a recording, so you can use it yourself and then put that into an AI. So voice is very much a sort of in the present. That's very much what's happening. What's coming is actually really interesting. At the moment, it's around using AI. So at the moment, you may do a Google search and it'll give you some information. In the future, AI will create a website for you to answer your query. And that's kind of where we're going, sort of customized user interfaces on things, which will be really powerful tools, to use with humans to make judgment calls. One thing that we are seeing is really clear is that the thing that remains human is judgment and taste. And those pieces aren't being replaced. Whereas there's lots of new tools to help you make decisions and understand what's going on. That judgment piece is always very human. So we don't see that changing very much in the short term anyway, at least in the next few years. If anything, that's going to become more important.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think we all know it's here to stay. We all know it's got an absolute place in the future. It's just making sure we're all a bit careful and don't get too carried away. It can't solve everybody's problems. So the key takeaway, yeah, as I just said, it's a really powerful tool, but it's not a replacement for expertise and judgment. The human in the loop, as we both said, is absolutely essential. It's a tech positive, not tech naive. I mean, we don't think any company, let alone financial services companies, will be able to operate in 3 or 4 years' time without AI, and things will change. People, I don't think will use Google search. I mean, what will become of Google search? Or it just become AI search? And so things will change quite dramatically. And we're keen at Ginkgo to stay on top of that curve, control it in a manageable way to be able to provide a much more efficient service to our clients moving forward. Okay. There. Any questions?
Yes, we've got a few questions, Daren and Mike. We've got first one is, I've seen adverts for AI financial planning apps. Are these safe to use?
No, basically. I mean, in a nutshell, at a very basic level, you might be able to do a little bit of budgeting, but you sometimes wonder where you have seen these too good to be true. Do some AI, and next thing you know, you're buying cryptocurrency or student accommodation in Gibraltar. You just got all sorts of scams that are attached to these sorts of things. Again, if you are going to do anything, make sure it's regulated, cross-check the sources, and make sure you're not going to get scammed.
Okay, Mike, do you want to add anything to that?
Not really. I think the majority of the apps and things that we see are built on top of a few of the big models. So if someone's offering you something they say is very different, likely it's not that different, and it's likely something you can probably do yourself using ChatGPT or Copilot or one of these things. So yeah, just be aware. I mean, there's a plethora of new apps coming out every day, and a lot of them are scams, to be fair, where it used to be very difficult to create an app or create a service, and now you can spin one up in a few minutes. So yeah, you've got to use your own personal judgment on this, but just be really careful with any apps, especially ones that are asking for your financial details.
Okay, thank you. Another question is, my nephew used ChatGPT to do his tax return. Should I be worried?
Depends what he put on his tax return. I mean, did he use Nano Banana? Is it all pictures? I think it's really difficult. I don't think anyone with a complex tax return is, we do a lot of tax returns, and we're currently doing, a mad tax return season at the moment, and we wouldn't go anywhere near it with AI. It's just nowhere near advanced enough or safe enough. I mean, it wouldn't know what boxes, it wouldn't know what allowances. It might go, oh yeah, you've had an income of £10,000, but it wouldn't know to claim various allowances, or it's anything from use of house, or even pension contributions, and claiming back additional higher rate tax relief. Yeah, I don't think it's a really good idea unless you had a very, very basic tax return. And if you did, you could. It's probably just as easy to do it yourself. Yeah. So I don't think that's a good idea.
Okay.
I'd take some, a little bit of solace in the fact that at least your nephew's playing around with this technology. So that's
at least
maybe a positive, right?
Yeah. What else is he doing with it? Whose tax return
Exactly.
was he doing?
So the next question is, how do I know if my financial advisor is using AI responsibly?
That's a good question. I think if they are a regulated financial advisor, we've already got, some guidance on how we should and shouldn't use it. For example, making sure we're using AI that is behind a paywall, is protected, isn't being used to train, and the data is secure. You can ask them. I mean, at the moment, there isn't an official guideline from the FCA. That's hopefully coming soon. It's really one of those questions that, you need to trust your advisor. And ultimately, if you can ask them a question, they can give you an answer you're happy with, then that's at the moment about as far as you can go. But most advisors are using it to some degree, although it's growing, as I've said, and will do as the future goes on.
I
Thank you,
think
Daren.
I just add into that the thing of if an advisor tells you they're not using AI, that's a flag for me personally, because I'd say
Yeah,
either they haven't got their head around this really important technology, or they're not being straight with you, because
yeah,
95% of everyone in professional circles is using this technology. So
yeah,
that would be
yeah.
so for me, transparency about how they're using it is probably the most important thing.
Yeah, I think as well, you're right. I mean, if you had an advisor who wasn't using AI, they're probably not a very efficient advisor. So I don't know what sort of level of service you're going to get from them, because it literally, whilst, we've all been using tech and computers, it's now at that point where, there's very little you could do this job as efficiently as necessary without some sort of AI.
Hmm.
Thank you. Will AI make financial advice cheaper?
Very possibly, and we do hope so. So it's definitely making things more efficient. I mean, we're in an industry which has been renowned for paperwork, jargon, and making things go as slow as possible because of a technical reason the FCA have got an issue with. So anything that overcomes that level of those hurdles will be able to make us work more efficiently, and we are absolutely trying as much as possible. And we did reduce our fees at the beginning of this year for our new clients coming on board, and some of that was because of the improved efficiencies that we've seen onboarding new clients and setting up new portfolios. So it is, yes, absolutely.
Thank you. And the last question I've got is, I asked ChatGPT for an answer about my pension. It gave me an answer. Should I trust it?
Well, again, no, I would cross-check it, ask Claude, ask, another AI system, see if you get the same answer from multiple places. But again, are you willing to trust it with your money? Because that's what it comes down to. Are you really going to put your money on the nose of an AI as opposed to an advisor, and only to find out it was cryptocurrency, or it was, student accommodation in Edinburgh, or something that really is not going to be appropriate for you? It's are you really going to put your money where its nose is?
Brilliant. All right. Thank you, Daren. Do you want to just share your screen with the contact details?
Yeah, sure.
Mike, anything else you'd like to add?
No, just encourage people to explore it, because effectively, I was a conversation the other day with people, and they said, "Is it going to take all our jobs?" And the reality is that pretty much every job is going to be affected, but it's just going to be in a different way. So,
Absolutely. Okay,
Yeah.
well, brilliant. Thank you very much, both of you. I'd like to thank you both for a very interesting and insightful webinar. As you say, everybody's using AI, and I think we've just got to be transparent about how we're using it.
And
Absolutely.
careful. Yeah,
And
definitely
careful.
be careful.
If anyone has any further questions, or you'd like to speak to Daren or Mike about specific content that they've covered this evening, the contact details are on the screen now. There's three quick reminders I need to just give you: that we'll share this recording on YouTube after the event. Everything we've covered is educational content, it's not personal advice, and your individual circumstances will be different. Thanks again, everyone, for joining us, and have a great evening. Thank you.
Bye bye.